everyone. How are you? Uh, I hope you are in. And I said our cameras should be on, so I should be able to see you. So kindly share your screen so that I can be able to see you and know that we are together. Uh, Good. I can see that people are logging in. I would love to see your cameras. Please share your screen. I am trying to do the same. I'm trying to do the same here. I don't know if I'm lost, but can you see me? Can you hear me from wherever you are? Please confirm that you can see me and hear me. Okay, I believe that I have two people here. I'm not so sure. I cannot see you. I'm still working on the setting of this thing, but I believe we can start. We are looking at closed tests today. And I said we will look at closed tests and the other part of English paper 1, which is oral skills. That's where we because the other day we looked at functional writing. And I don't know if I remembered to give you some work, but today I will remember to give you work. So I want us to start with looking at closed tests. And closed test is the second question in your English paper 1. It is worth a total of 10 marks. It's a compulsory question. It's worth 10 marks. I'm looking at there's something I'm looking for here and I'm not seeing it. I'm looking at us getting the 10 marks in closed test. And today I'm going to give you the do's and the don'ts of closed tests. What is the examiner looking for in your closed test? And how do you get all the 10 marks? That's what we are doing today. So take out your pen and a place to write. The first topic we are looking at today is cloze tests. Write that clearly. A cloze test is a passage. It's a broken passage. It's a broken passage with blank spaces that you are required to fill in, and this part is important, with the most appropriate word. That is what the instruction says, because there are many words that can usually fit in that blank space, truly. But what we are looking for is the one that is most appropriate. Most appropriate. So actually, the first rule around cloze tests is that you must find the most appropriate word. This lesson is going to help you around how do you get that most appropriate word, and actually, how do you know that this is the most appropriate word? Are we ready? I want to hear some feedback, because now I cannot see you for reasons I don't understand. I think I'm still a greenhorn in matters of setting up this channel. So please, can I hear your voices so that I can know that we are here and you are following? So are you guys ready? Good. So as always, I am going to be referring to this book. Remember, we said this is our book. This is the ultimate KCSE English guide, paper 1, paper 2, paper 3. And I also said in our last lesson that you can get this book anytime you need it. I gave you my number, 0710 800 252. That's my contact. Do not hesitate to call me, to contact me, to reach out to me, and acquire yourself a copy of this book. And as I promised, this book will definitely give you that A that you're looking for in English. It is the ultimate KCSE English masterpiece. And even in our lesson today, I will be using this book. So let's begin with the do's of cloze test. What do you do when you run into the cloze test question? The first thing that you do is read through the whole passage. That is the first thing. And why reading through the whole passage? Because you want to get to understand the context. You want to get to know what this passage is all about anyway, so that you can start aligning yourself with the field in which the passage has been drawn from. For instance, maybe it is a passage about football, a football match between Portugal and Argentina, where Cristiano is playing against Lionel Messi. So the moment you read through the passage from the first word with those blank spaces to the last word, your mind, your head, your environment, your thinking is transferred and taken to the football world. Therefore, even the vocabularies that you will think about, even the words that you will think about, will be words that will align with the football world. It is easier for you to get an appropriate word when you understand the context. So the rule number one is read through the whole cloze test just the way it is. Just the way it is. Don't do what? Don't try to fill in anything. Just read through it with those blank spaces. And now, rule number two. I have always said this, although a few students actually do it, but I've always said it. Take out your pencil because there is no assurity that you're going to get the correct and most appropriate words at your first try. In your first attempt, you may indeed miss out some words. That is why I usually insist have a pencil. Rule number two, read your cloze test once again, this time with your pencil in hand. And fill in the blank spaces that are obvious because every cloze test has obvious blank spaces. Like when you just read through, there are those things that you can directly see. This word, this blank space, the correct word or the correct answer is this one. They are very obvious. So the second rule is please take out your pencil, use your pencil, and this second time as you read your passage, your cloze test, fill in the words or the blank spaces that you find easily obvious. Skip the others. Anything that is not obvious, skip it. Rule number three, read your passage the third time with the obvious answers that you provided. What will that do? That will help you to now find and nib the other answers easily. Now, 99% of students don't do what I have said, but the 1% that do have, have developed confidence around cloze tests and they do very well. So there is no rocket science around cloze tests. The idea is first understand the context from which the cloze test is set to get the obvious answers. You know, a cloze test is like a skeleton. So you start putting on the obvious pieces of meat, right? The obvious answers, but please use a pencil. Now, when you now read the passage the second time with the obvious answers having been provided, you will be easily guided to find the other answers. Now, another thing that you need to remember as you put up or you work around your cloze test, and I'm drawing, as I promised, I'm drawing from this book. This book has enlisted the do's and the don'ts of cloze test. We have 8 do's, the things you need to do around cloze test. I've looked at the first one. Actually, I have said here, I'm the author of this book, avoid filling blanks in isolation because the meaning comes from the whole passage. That's why I've said you must every other time read the whole passage. After you provide the answers that you feel are obvious, go back and read the whole passage. And I'll tell you at the end of this, I'll tell you why. Another thing that you're supposed to do under cloze test is identify the correct part of speech. Are they looking for a pronoun? Are they looking for a conjunction? Are they looking for an adjective? Are they looking for a preposition? Actually, generally, cloze test just tests grammar rules and the use of the correct parts of speech. Generally, that's what cloze tests are all about. Rule number 3 is apply grammar rules. And these are things like spellings. Please ensure that the word you're providing is correctly spelled. Punctuation. Look at the punctuation. If there is a full stop before your blank space, it means that your word, the word that you're writing there, must start with a capital letter. Those are some of the grammar rules that are marked around cloze tests. So be very careful. Pay attention to punctuation, spelling, All those grammar tense, all those grammar rules, subject verb agreement, and etc. Now, finally, write only one word for each blank spaces. For each blank space, only one word for each blank space. The moment a student gives two words for one blank space, the assumption is that they are second guessing. They're not very sure about which word is most appropriate, and therefore they cannot earn a mark. In English, you don't award marks for guessing. There is no guesswork in English that will earn you a mark. So please provide just one answer for one blank space. And by the way, it is important for me to mention that hyphenated words are considered one word. For example, a word like mother-in-law, that's a hyphenated word. It's or passerby. So maybe the correct word, which is a phrase in this case, is passerby. So those are not considered as two words for that particular blank space. It is considered one compound word. But unless you are giving a hyphenated word, please just provide one word for one blank space. The last thing that you must do, and this is a must, after you have provided your answers with your pencil, can you read through the whole passage with your answers? And this time round, you must now ask yourself, is this the most appropriate word? Like, are these the most appropriate words? Do they make sense? Does my close test add up? Now that I have provided these words the way I've done, does my close test add up? Most of the students hand in their close test without reading through, and when you pick it and you start marking, you see that if they would have read through before handing it, they would have seen that this is obviously wrong. Obviously wrong. So take time and read through your close test after you have finished filling it to see if the words that you have provided are appropriate and if your close test actually does make sense. Now, what are the don'ts of a closed test? What are these things that you must not do? We have said do not give more than one word for a blank space. We have also said do not ignore grammar rules and spellings. And we have also said that do not leave a blank space unattempted. I tell students every day that you, in an exam situation, do not know the correct answer for any question. However sure you are not the ultimate marking scheme. So please do not leave a blank space. You would rather attempt. You would rather give an attempt. Try. Because whatever you are writing there might just be the correct answer. And anyway, a wrong answer is better than no answer. So please do not leave blank spaces unattempted. Now, that is as far as closed tests are concerned. I have given you a list of things that you need to do around closed test. And as far as closed test is concerned, I don't want us to spend so much time there. I want us to immediately move to the last question in English paper 1, which is called oral skills. Oral skills. The oral skills paper is 30 marks. 30 marks. Now, you may have come across a lot of revision material around oral skills because they exist. But I also want to take this opportunity to remind you and affirm that this book is the ultimate revision material around paper 1, oral skills, and of course around all the 3 papers, paper 1, paper 2, and paper 3. And in my review of oral skills, of course using this book, I am going to look at 4 itemized concepts that are tested around oral skills. And I now need you to take out your pen. I'm going to break the oral skills question into 4 different parts. Let me just see something. Am I getting feedback from here? I'm going to break it down into 4 different parts. And I'm going to start with oral skills question is a question 3 question. So question 3 question in your KCSE English paper 1, that is question 3. And I'm going to break it into parts so that we can look at it very well. So can you write this? Question 3 part A. Under question 3 part A, put in brackets oral poem, oral narrative, short forms. In question 3 part A of your English paper 1, the setter or the examiner usually has 3 items to pick from. They can decide to set an oral poem. They can decide to set an oral narrative. They can also decide to set a short form. Now, these are not just statistics that have been pulled from God knows where. These are actually statistics that have been pulled from your KCSE past papers, and I'm going to show you that. In KCSE, this is what has been happening. Under question 3A, an oral poem has been set for 14 different years. Question 3A, there was an oral poem in 2006, 2008, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2015, 2016, 2018, 2019, 2021, 2022, 2024, 2025. All those years. Under question 3A, KCSE set an oral poem. We can confidently say that indeed an oral poem can be set in question 3 part A. However, I have said that sometimes instead of an oral poem, the examiner can set an oral narrative in question 3 part A. For example, in the years 2007, 2013, 2014, and 2021, the examiner actually set an oral narrative under question 3 part A English paper 1. Therefore, we can comfortably say that as far as question 3 part A is concerned, in oral skills English paper 1, the examiner can set an oral poem or an oral narrative. But in KCSE 2020, the examiner actually set a riddle, which is a short form of oral literature, in English question 3 part A, paper 1. That is why I said that as far as this part A is concerned, an examiner can set a short form or an oral narrative or an oral poem. Now, let us look at the possibility of an oral poem, which is the most set question in this section. When the examiner sets an oral poem in English question A oral skills, question 3A oral skills, what are they looking for? Now, I just want to mention that there is a very big difference between the oral poem that we meet in paper 1 and the poetry that we meet in paper 2, which we will talk about in another lesson. Because the oral poem we meet in paper 1 is deliberately a song that is composed to be sung and performed. And the questions that are set are questions that surround either performance of that oral poem or things we call sound patterns, like alliteration, like consonants, like rhyme, like assonance. Those are sound patterns. Repetition is not a sound pattern, but it also is a feature of oral poetry. Now, in case an examiner decides to set an oral poem, which is highly likely next year, highly likely next year, Or in case an examiner decides to set a short form or an oral narrative, which are highly likely this year, for those who have candidates, please listen carefully. The examiner will target specific questions, and I'm going to talk about them just now. The examiner will target very specific questions. These are commonly set questions around oral poetry, around oral narratives, around short forms when they are tested in English paper 1. When you look at this book, what I have done in this book is I have given an example of a short oral poem. And I have gone ahead to say, what are the common questions that are set under oral poetry in English paper 1? For example, question 1 says, describe the rhyme scheme of this poem and explain the effectiveness. That's question 1. Probably you have come across such questions. What did I do? I went ahead to explain what the examiner wants when such a question is set. When a question asks you to describe the rhyme scheme, the examiner wants you to identify the pattern of the rhyming words at the end of the lines, state whether the scheme is regular or irregular, and explain the effectiveness of that particular rhyme scheme, whether it's regular or irregular. And I have given a model answer. For example, the model answer reads, the rhyme scheme of the poem is A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, H, G, H. I am using this poem here. This poem is called Strew on Her Roses. It was written by Madam Karen Gaki. I'm using this one. And I'm saying the model answer is the rhyme scheme of the poem is A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, H. And then look at this. Under that, I have written a complete sentence describing the rhyme scheme. I have said the poem has a regular rhyme scheme because the pattern is predictable. And I've gone ahead to say this regular rhyme scheme enhances musicality and makes the poem easily memorable. Now, when you are answering oral skills questions in English paper 1, construct complete sentences. That is very important. That is very important. Always construct complete sentences. Why do students fail here? When a question says, describe the rhyme scheme, most students, this is what they do. They'll go and write there A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, and then they move to the next question. Or someone writes A, B, A, B, G, H, G, H, and then they write there regular, and then they stop. So what is this that is regular? And what do you mean by regular? The question always says describe the rhyme scheme. You have not described anything. Indeed, you have just stated. But now, I want you to learn that a rhyme scheme question expects you to do two things. One, to identify the pattern, A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F. That is the pattern upon which the rhyming words are happening. I know you know how to do that. But after you have identified that pattern, now you must go ahead and use a complete sentence to describe it and say the rhyme scheme is regular or predictable if you want. The rhyme scheme is irregular. Why have you concluded that the rhyme scheme is irregular? So you must give me the reason. So you say, the poem has an irregular rhyme scheme because the pattern is unpredictable. That is the reason. And now remember the question has said, explain the effectiveness. So put a full stop and go on to tell me what is the effectiveness of that irregular rhyme scheme. The effectiveness of rhyme scheme, the effectiveness of rhyme, because rhyme is a sound pattern, is number one, to enhance musicality. Number two, to enhance memorability or make a poem easily memorable. And number three, to enhance what? Do you know those things, by the way? The effectiveness of sound patterns. All sound patterns have the same effectiveness. Assonance, consonance, alliteration, rhyme, they all have the same effectiveness. Even repetition, although repetition is not directly a sound pattern, but when used in an oral poem, it has the same effect. Repetition also enhances musicality. Repetition also enhances rhythm. Repetition also makes a poem easily memorable. Those are the three effectiveness aspects of any sound pattern. Anytime you see a question asking you for the effectiveness of assonance or consonance or alliteration or even repetition or rhyme, always remember there are three. Number one, enhance musicality. Number two, enhance memorability. Number three, enhance rhythm. By enhance, I mean they make a poem musical. They make a poem easily memorable. That's memorability. They enhance, they give the poem a sense of rhythm. Always remember that. Now, this question can be asked in many different ways. For example, another setter will not ask directly. Another setter will say, uh, where is that question? Another setter will say, how has this poem achieved musicality? How has this poem achieved musicality? In other words, they're asking you, is there assonance in this poem? Is there alliteration in this poem? Is there consonance in this poem? Is there rhyme in this poem? And indeed, is there repetition in this poem? Because that is how a poem achieves musicality or rhythm or memorability. Now, another common question that you are likely to come across is a question that will ask you how you will say a certain line. How will you say the last line of the poem and why? I have just said that when you're answering questions in oral skills English paper 1, that part called oral skills, ensure you write a complete sentence. That is a rule. So, for example, if a question says, how will you say the last line of the poem? And then you write there, falling intonation. The concept is correct, but the framing and the packaging of your answer is wrong. Therefore, you will not get the mark. So when a question says, how will you say the last line of the poem? You must construct a complete sentence. You must write and say, I will say the last line of the poem, or I will say it with a falling intonation, for example, and go ahead to provide a reason. Maybe you can say, I will say it slowly with a falling intonation to convey a sense of finality. Now, that is what a complete answer looks like. I have constructed a complete sentence. I have explained how I will say the line. I have given a reason why I will say it with the falling intonation. Now, I don't want to go into so much because we may dwell there too much, but I want to, for those of you who have this book, I want you to look at all the common questions that can be set around an oral poem. All of them are captured here, and how you can frame your answer. All of them are here. I think I have over. I think I have over how many questions? I think I have over 11 different common questions that are set around an oral poem. All of them are here. And for each question, I have provided how you need to write your answer. I've given you a model answer. I've also explained what the examiner will be looking for when they are marking such a question. If a question says, what features qualify this to be an oral poem? For example, what is the examiner looking for in such a question? And how do you model your answer? Which words would you stress in line 1 of the poem and why? Most likely you have come across such questions. Which words will you stress and why? What is the examiner looking for? What is this question looking for? For example, here in this case, the examiner is looking for, the examiner wants you to identify the content words. because typically the content words are what are stressed in a line of a poem. Nouns, action verbs, and sometimes adjectives. Those are the content words usually that are stressed in a poem. And don't just go for a word because it's a noun. Read that line and ask yourself, is this word very important in this line? Or can the line do without this word anyway? Because the words that are very important are what we call content words. And those are the words that we stress in a line of a poem. And I've also said that when you're responding to that, please construct a complete sentence. I would stress the words peace and yearning because they are content words and they carry the emotion of the line. That's a sample or a model answer. Friends, in case you do not yet have this book, please go and get it. You will find all the other aspects of oral poetry that can be tested in KCSE here and their model answers. Now, in case the examiner does not want to set an oral poem, they will set an oral narrative. And I've just said for the candidates this year, an oral narrative is very likely in your English paper one. In fact, in your English paper one, as you prepare, don't forget to prepare for a short form and an oral narrative, because there are very high chances that your English paper one this year will have at least a short form. It will either test a riddle or a tongue twister or or a proverb. I'm going to talk about those things, or a pun, because KCSE has not tested short forms for quite some time. And when you look at the current trends of KCSE, an oral poem has been set over and over and over in English paper one. And the examiner may decide this year to bring an oral narrative anyway, because it's a viable option. So please also prepare. I can see someone saying, good, thank you. Also prepare thoroughly for the possibility of an oral poem in your English paper one and chances of a short form being set. The good news is that a short form can actually be set alongside an oral poem or an oral narrative. So whichever the case, prepare for short forms. A short form can be set in your English paper one anytime, either this year or next year. But what I know is that a short form must be set before KCSE closes its doors. Now, if the examiner decides to set an oral narrative, which can happen in in uh, in English paper one, for example, here, the examiner will test specific performance questions. Anytime an oral narrative appears in English paper one, the questions that are set are questions that are around things to do with performance. How, for example, how will you prepare? Assuming you have been asked to perform this narrative before your classmates, how will you prepare? Have you seen such questions? I believe you have. As a rule, I have said, always construct a grammatically complete sentence when you're responding to all questions under oral skills in paper one. So if the question says, how will you prepare? Then completely say, I will. For example, you can say, I will memorize the narrative thoroughly so I can perform it without reading from a script. That's a preparation aspect. Another student will say, I will rehearse in front of a mirror to master appropriate facial expressions. And always give a reason. By the way, this is important. Don't just say, I will rehearse before a group of friends and stop there. Why? What is the reason? If you just say, I will research on my audience, and then you stop there, that answer is incomplete. Why are you researching on your audience? I will research on my audience to understand their age group and interests so that I can adopt my delivery style appropriately. So I may not run through all the questions, but I just want you to know that as far as an oral narrative is concerned, and it can be set in your paper one, please. I've already shown you the statistics. The examiner will ask questions like, how will you know that your audience is paying attention? How will you maintain the attention of the audience throughout your performance? Such are the questions that you should expect when an oral narrative is set in English paper one. And as I've put it, you can find straight answers and model answers, and even what the examiner is looking for if you patiently go and look for this book. Finally, the examiner can actually set a short form in English paper one. Actually, let me just say this. Unlike poetry and oral narratives, which can also appear in paper two, short forms can only be set in paper one. It is only in paper one that you will find a proverb, that you can find a tongue twister, that you can find a riddle, that you can find a pun. Those are the four common short forms of oral narratives. So when you are preparing for your paper one, don't forget to go back and review your notes on number one, proverbs. When a short form is set, any short form, whether it is a proverb, whether it is a riddle, whether it is a tongue twister, when a short form is set in English paper one, three things will be tested. Write this down. Number one, they will ask you to identify the genre. In short, they're asking you, is this a riddle? When you look at it, is this a proverb? They just want to know if you can tell the difference between a tongue twister and a riddle. So the first question will always be, identify the genre above. Is this a proverb? Is this a tongue twister? Two, they will ask you about features. Features. That is why I was saying, before you sit for any paper one exam, can you go back to your notes on short forms and remind yourself features of, for example, what are the features of tongue twisters? What are the features of riddles? What are the features of proverbs? Can you go back to your notes and look at those things? Because that is the next question that will be set when a short form. There is no way a short form can be set in an exam and an examiner fails to test features. And number three, functions. So they'll ask for the genre. Write that down. What is the genre? Identify the genre. Number two, they'll ask, what are the features? And then number three, they'll ask, what are the functions? Those three things, they are always tested around short forms. I'm going to show you. For example, this is KCSE 2020. In KCSE 2020, the examiner was kind enough to set a riddle. The first question was, okay, of course, if it's a riddle, they'll ask for stages. So the first question was, describe the stages of a riddling process evident in the riddle above. That is one. The second question was, what are the features of the riddle above? The third question was, identify functions of the genre above. The fourth question was, who are the most likely participants in this riddle? The last question was, what would have happened if the respondent had not gotten the right answer? Because this riddle that KCSE said, the respondent got the right answer at stage 4. So the riddle stopped there. So they're asking for the other 2 stages in case they would have missed it. So please, and the good thing is that this book has all those things. It has features. What are puns? What are the features of puns? And what are the functions of puns? What are tongue twisters? What are the examples are here? What are the features of tongue twisters? And what are the functions of tongue twisters? In fact, I have paired it up with trends in tongue twisters KCSE. Has KCSE ever set a tongue twister? Yes, that's KCSE 2017. What question was set? And I've even provided an answer for that particular question. Now, I have looked today at oral skills, especially specifically question 3 part A. And I have said that the examiner has three options. As far as question 3 part A is concerned, I've shown you. The examiner can set an oral poem, the examiner can set an oral narrative, the examiner can actually set a short form. And I have said, in each case, there are specific types of questions that are set. We have looked at some of them. And there is a way you need to model your answer. In English paper 1, what causes students to lose marks is not because they don't know the answer. It's usually just because of the way they frame their answer, the way they project their answer, the way they write their answer, or the way they package it. And I have said that as a rule, you must always construct a complete sentence when responding to questions in English paper 1, especially under oral skills section. Now, the other aspects that are set in paper 1, question 3B, I'm going to mention them now. Take your pen out. Question 3B, question 3C, question 3D. I'm going to mention them. What are the other things that are tested? Under question 3B, the examiner will test something called sounds and pronunciation. In brackets, put the following: homophones, silent letters, minimal pairs, etc. Under sounds and pronunciation. Those are the things that are tested in English paper 1, question 3, part B. And as I have said, this is a pointer so that when you go down to revise for your paper 1, please can you be sure to go through those things. Even phonetic symbols, where they give you a symbol and then they ask you categorize or group the following words according to the pronunciation of the underlined letter. I think you have seen such questions. Let's move to question 3, part C. All those details that I'm talking about are here, by the way, just in case you are asking yourself. We have sounds and pronunciation, a whole topic I've dealt with all the possible sounds and pronunciation aspects that can be set in your paper here, how they are set, if they are homophones, if they are silent letters, if they are phonetic symbols. Let me show you, and their KCSE past trends, if there are phonetic symbols, if they are diphthongs. There's something called a diphthong. These are commonly tested sounds questions in English paper 1, and I've been giving you KCSE trends as well. And of course, there are answers and practice questions. Now let's move. Question 3, part C. I believe that's where we are. The examiner will set questions around something called stress and intonation. Stress and intonation. Dear good people, don't make the mistake of walking into a paper 1 kama haujaenda kusoma kitu inaitwa rules of stress. Unaona, hii stress ya English sio stress ya ati girlfriend amekuacha. Hiyo sio stress yenye tunasema hapa. Hii stress ni ingine tu ya English. Hii tunasema, this one is for those people who want to pronounce words correctly, and therefore they choose to stress a certain syllable in a word or even a certain word in a sentence, because we have word stress and we have sentence stress. And there are rules that govern stress. So they'll give you a question, for example, probably you have seen such a question, and then they say, something like, let me read you an example of a question in KCSE 2022. In KCSE 2020, let me go to KCSE 2024. In KCSE 2024, they said, underline the stressed syllable in the following words. And then they gave you the word exercise and then the word reasonable. Those are the words. And in fact, there is no single year in KCSE where stress has not been set. Can I say that again? There is no single year in KCSE where stress was not set. I can show you. These are questions, KCSE questions on stress. I began from 2014, all the way, every single year. up to 2025, a question on stress has to be set in KCSE, either word stress or sentence stress. That is how important stress and intonation as a topic is for you. So please learn the rules of stress, and we have all the rules of stress here. I've given you all the rules of stress here. Actually, I have given you 11 rules of stress. For example, rule 3 says, for words with 2 syllables, no, let me start with rule 1. Rule 1 says, stress falls on the root or the main word, not on the prefix or the suffix. We never even try or attempt to stress a suffix or a prefix. For example, a word like misuse, the root word there is use. The mis is what we call a prefix. So we cannot stress the prefix. We rush to the root word use. That is the word we will stress. Now, all these stress rules are here. But I have made a note here, down here, and I have said that as far as KCSE is concerned, KCSE prefers testing exceptions more than the normal rules. That is a very, very important thing to note. Every stress rule has an exception. It has an exception. And what KCSE has been doing, instead of directly setting that rule, it has been looking for a word that is exempted from that rule, and then they bring that word. So what did I do when I was teaching stress and intonation here? I was giving a rule and I was giving the exception. I was saying the rule says that, for example, the rule says that for 2-syllabic words, we stress the second syllable to form a verb. That is what the rule says. But then I was quick to say there are exceptions in this rule, to this rule. For example, in some cases, and this is commonly tested in KCSE, some verbs have their stress falling on the first syllable, e.g., manage, register, exercise, promise, answer. And indeed, KCSE 2024, look at the words they brought. They said, provide the, underline the stress syllable in the following words. Number 1, exercise. Sasa wewe kwa sababu unajua exercise is a verb, you would have rushed to the second syllable. But what KCSE was doing, they were testing the exception to that rule. That is why when I was writing this book, I was very careful to point out the exceptions of every rule. Which words fall out of the concept of that rule, so that KCSE does not catch you off guard. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to urge you to review your notes on stress and intonation, because there is no way KCSE will set up paper 1, and not just KCSE, any paper 1, without testing the concept of stress and intonation. If you have understood that concept, give me a like. Very good. Can see 3 of them there. Finally, your English paper 1, question 3, part D, I believe that's where we are. We'll test listening and speaking skills, etiquette, concepts around listening and speaking skills, and etiquette. Now here, I may not go into so many details, but here I want you to know that what is going to be tested are things to do with, for example, telephone etiquette. Maybe just list these things down. Listening skills, things like paying attention, active listening, barriers to effective listening, telephone etiquette, turn taking. Probably you've come across mwalimu anafundisha something called turn taking skills. alafu anasema violations of turn taking. And then you are just there, you're shaking your head like this. You wonder, when will this lesson end? Those are things that are tested in English paper one. The last concept, the last aspect of English paper one. They test such things: turn taking skills, interrupting politely, interrupting or disagreeing politely, I've talked about telephone etiquette. I have talked about, I don't know if I've talked about it, presentations of speech, stage fright and how to deal with stage fright, debates, how to prepare for a debate, how to present your points, interviews, how to prepare for an interview, as an interviewer or an interviewee, negotiation skills, and all those things are here, by the way. All those things I'm mentioning are here. If they're negotiation skills, all of them are here. Stages of negotiation, principles of negotiation, all of them are here. And they are KCSE trends. When did KCSE set a question on negotiation skills? And what did they test? And what are the answers? Personal space, and of course, here I have all KCSE questions from 2015 to 2025 together with their answers, paper one. I want to end our lesson there because our lesson should just be 1 hour. We began a little bit late because I was trying to set up this channel. I was struggling with that, but I think I'm learning slowly. So I want to end our lesson there. We will be back today at 3, between 3 to 4. Please keep time to look at English paper 2. We are starting English paper 2 today. In case you have a question, please, let me give you my number again: 0710 800 252. Ask me that question. As far as English is concerned, paper 1, in case you have a question, the things that we have learned, in case you have a feedback aspect to give, you want to say something, give feedback, etc. Write me a text, WhatsApp call, or whatever on that number I've given you, and I will directly respond to you. In case you have a question or whatever, just ask as far as English paper 1 is concerned. We will meet here at 3 to start English paper 2. So keep time and invite your friends. Share this link, share this YouTube channel. And before you go, ensure that you have subscribed to this YouTube channel and you have set a reminder, a notification, so that when the lesson starts, you are notified. Thank you and have a good day ahead.